The idea of good and evil, right and wrong, cheapens it. It cheapens it.
But you just did that.
I'm not doing it. I'm doing the opposite. I'm not triggered. What are you, 19? We're using 19-year-old woke language now that I'm triggered?
Okay,
I'm not triggered. I got my legs crossed. It means I'm comfortable.
Okay, well, you just seemed a little triggered. You
I don't like setting up Putin as a model.
Candace Owens and Chris Cuomo were on the Valuetaiment channel on the PBD Podcast live in a live setting with a live audience, and it got very, very heated. Their debate over Russia and just the state of the country in general got very, very heated, and it was really cool to see them in a live setting go at it like this. Candace Owens called out Chris Cuomo for being triggered throughout this entire discussion because it was very obvious to me and probably to you watching this video and everybody in the audience of this live show on the PBD Podcast that Chris Cuomo was triggered at the things that Candace Owens was telling him, and she was just stating some very, very simple facts. So let's get into this video on the Valuetaiment channel on the PBD Podcast in front of a live audience. Candace Owens and Chris Cuomo got into a heated debate. Let's check this out.
Picking a metric of what's the guy's IQ is not enough for me. First of all, he did not give you. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because it's what do you do with your intelligence? You think he gave you an accurate recitation of Russian history starting in the 8th century because Candace just said so. She's wrong and you're wrong, okay? He did not give you an accurate recitation. He gave you a KGB doctored look at why it's okay that he wants to reestablish the Soviet Union. That's what he gave.
Oh, stop it.
Listen, I'm not here to play Russia good, Russia bad, okay?
Russia has a smaller GDP than California.
So what? So what? They're also invading a country right now just for avarice.
Americans are economically so unintelligible that they're going to believe that the threat that we are facing today.
If you enjoy videos like this one, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Turn the notification bell on. It really does help me out quite a bit. Let's get back to the content.
Is Russia trying to reestablish? So this is like Cold War propaganda. We got to move on from that, okay?
But it's just as real now as it was then.
1960s.
And remember, in America, these people are allowed to be here right now doing things they could never do in Russia. Never. Nobody can speak out against Putin. He is at over 75% in popularity polls because people know what happens if you answer differently. They make no money. They have no press freedoms. When they try to exercise themselves, even on the internet,
starting to sound like
chased.
America today. It's January 6th.
Literally, that's literally America today. You know, like Candace Owens is about to say right here, the January 6th stuff. Like, people are getting arrested to this day for things that happened on January 6th when it's well known that that was, you know, that was actually fueled by the government. Like, they placed people in there to try to incite the things that happened on J6. And obviously, you know, you get canceled and on social media platforms, you get suppressed, and the FBI is like in direct contact and direct communication with these social media platforms. We found that out with the Twitter files, suppressing these certain, you know, channels and certain profiles on Twitter and stuff like that that talk positively about Donald Trump and other candidates that they, air quotes, don't want you to put in a positive light. So you're talking about Russia and like the propaganda that Russia goes through, when in reality, the United States isn't much better, if better at all. The propaganda that we have within our country, within our media, is laughed at by people like Putin and by people in Russia, the citizens of Russia. Because the only difference between us and them is Russians know, okay, I am being propagandized. I am under the threat of, if I don't vote for Putin, bad things might happen to me. Americans think that we are actually free in our thought, that we aren't being brainwashed. At least probably not you watching this video, but the vast majority of the population believe that they aren't truly being brainwashed and propagandized. And that's why we're laughed at by, you know, by countries like Russia, not just the leaders, not just Putin, but by the citizens as well. And like every other country, you hear them talk about America and they're like, dude, you guys have some of the worst propaganda of anyone. And they just laugh at us.
Are locked up for a long thing. You locked up grandmas for expressing their opinions.
That is something to be concerned about.
You are saying
that is something to be concerned about.
That is correct.
Not admired,
press. So
but used as a point of fear.
They wanted to arrest Tucker Carlson for going over to speak to a leader of a country that we are allegedly not at war with.
Listen.
So you're also describing America while you are telling us.
I am not describing America. I'm describing what America should not be. So be careful about putting up a model of what you think has some value.
Nobody said there was a model. We just said that it's very obvious that Putin can complete a sentence and that Biden can't.
Yeah,
and
he can complete a sentence. He can also likely murder his opponents. And that's a function of his intelligence also, because it's not guided by any sense of morality. And
if we're being real, Joe Biden would probably do the same. I mean, we're seeing what his leaders, his puppet masters, and people, you know, that are trying to prop Biden up, are seeing what they're doing to his opponents right now. They're trying to throw him in jail, you know? So in reality, if Joe Biden had the power, the influence, the cognitive ability of Putin, I mean, who knows what he would do to stay in office? Who knows what his puppet masters would make him do to stay in office? He might also kill off his competition instead of just throwing him in jail. Who knows?
That matters too. And Tucker making the decision.
Gonzalo Lira was just killed by Zelensky. He's a thug. We shouldn't be supporting Ukraine at all, not a single dollar.
Even if that were true, which neither of us know whether it is.
We know.
Then
we definitely know.
That's a policy argument. Have the policy argument. The idea of good and evil, right and wrong, cheapens it. It cheapens it.
But you just did that.
I'm not doing it. I'm doing the opposite. I'm not triggered. What are you, 19? We're using 19-year-old woke language now that I'm triggered?
Okay,
I'm not triggered. I got my legs crossed. It means I'm comfortable.
Okay, well, you just seemed a little triggered. You
I don't like setting up Putin as a model.
I didn't. Nobody here, everyone is listening to what I said, and I'm going to not just double down, I'm going to triple down, quadruple down on the fact that it's very obvious to the American people that our leaders are extremely lackluster, and that has been made even more abundantly clear after having watched Tucker Carlson sit across from Vladimir Putin, which was heroic on his part, because we are tired of being propagandized. We are tired of people pretending, if you live in Russia, there's going to be so much propaganda. There's so much propaganda here.
I agree.
Okay, we are suffering.
And it's funny because Chris Cuomo is talking about it cheapens the argument whenever he uses like the argument of good and evil. Nobody did that except for Chris Cuomo here. What Candace Owens was saying was the simple fact that Putin runs laps around our leaders, cognitive, intelligence-wise. And PBD is going to say this later on, but for an example, if Putin and Joe Biden were at the negotiating table, it's very clear who's going to come out on top of that, right? It's going to be Russia. It's not going to be the United States. And that's all Candace Owens was saying. She's not saying Russia is inherently a good, a force for good in the world. Whether or not that's true is kind of irrelevant to the argument. Chris Cuomo was the one that's making that relevant, was trying to make that relevant by saying, yes, Putin might be more intelligent, but he's bad. It's like, okay, that's not what we're talking about, though. Putin is very obviously running laps around our world leaders cognitively, our United States leaders cognitively. And there's just no doubt about that. And the only way that you can possibly deflect that is by saying, yeah, but he's a bad guy. And that's what Chris Cuomo tried to do.
From the exact same things that you accuse Vladimir Putin of doing.
I agree.
Locking up people's opponents, right?
I agree. I don't agree with locking up their opponents.
FBI agents showing up on American people's doorsteps because they attended a rally on January 6th. 3 of my friends had FBI agents. They didn't even step foot in the Capitol, okay? Had FBI agents show up because they wanted any person that even showed up to hear Trump speak on January 6th to feel threatened by that, because the establishment said that you weren't allowed to support Donald Trump, okay? So I'm going to speak to how the public is feeling right now. And we are very aware of the fact that Joe Biden could potentially be dead right now, okay? We don't even know, he can barely make it through a sentence. And when we see somebody like Vladimir Putin who is able to, is what?
You do know that Joe Biden's not dead. And you do know that he wasn't shot up with something before he went out there.
I actually do believe he was shot up with adrenaline before he goes.
Come on.
What do you mean, come on? JFK used to do that.
Come on.
So it's like,
listen,
they obviously are giving.
He's deflecting once again. And also, when it comes to, Russia killing off their political opponents, stuff like that, the United States not doing that, but sending FBI agents to people's house who was around on J6th, the only thing that's stopping the government currently, the current regime, from doing things like the way that Russia does things, the only thing that's stopping them, in my opinion, is the right to bear arms. Like, it is the fact that they know that everybody is armed and everybody is, like, not going to give up their arms, right? And it's funny, because the side that is trying to throw their political opponents in jail, doing things as similar to Russia as possible, is also the side that's trying to strengthen the gun laws, right? To get rid of guns completely. It's funny how that works, right?
Drugs.
The truth is enough. And I'll tell you why it bemes problematic, okay? Look, it's a half joke. They shot Biden up with something last night.
It's not a half joke.
But here's what happens. Well, look, if you really believe that, that's fine. It would be just nice to have a basis for it. But yeah, he's going to take a drug test. Okay. Look, here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen, okay? Just trust me on this, because you've already seen it. You're going to know that it's already true. You are allowing for a BS standard of appraisal. So now...
Intelligent is a BS standard?
It's not intelligent. It's the shooting up part. So now they'll start showing clips of Trump where it seems that he's not speaking fluidly, and they'll talk about whether he's on drugs. And
they did that already.
They will, but that's what you enable with this. I'm saying just stick with the truth. Are our leaders performing the way we need them to be? That's a rhetorical question. No. You had in Congress last night, I forget who smacked me with this stat, but it was a great one. 14% popularity for members of Congress, right? That sounds about right. It's somewhere between 12% and 20%, depending on the poll. 94% re-election rate. How do you have such low popularity and such high re-election rate? Because the game is rigged. That's why. Now, the truth is enough, okay? Just stick with the truth. The problem is when you get into these situations of comparing a guy who's just a bad guy with what you want in your own leadership, I don't think it sends you to the right
The
place.
truth is that Vladimir Putin was able to communicate in a way that was coherent.
Would you want Vladimir Putin to be your president?
This is such a fine statement.
Would you want Vladimir Putin to be your president?
Even though it's irrelevant to the argument that's happening here, even though that's what Chris Cuomo just asked Candace Owens there is totally irrelevant to the conversation, my answer is yes. And I think a lot of people, yes, in comparison to what we have currently, right? Like, I'm not saying he'd be like the perfect U.S. president or anything, but in comparison to what we have currently, of course. And I think if anyone who's not lying to themselves would also say yes. Let me know in the comments if that's absolutely nuts to say. Personally, yes, I would rather have Vladimir Putin be the president than Joe Biden, 100%. And I think that if you say that you wouldn't, you're probably lying to yourself a little bit. Like, I don't know if you guys are seeing, like, look at this. So I actually had this pulled up and ready to go for this. Look at this clip here. This is a clip from the State of the Union. I know it's a little bit off-centered, but this is a clip from the State of the Union last night when Joe Biden tried to address the Laken Riley situation, right? The Laken Riley situation. And this is obviously a parody tweet, but check out what Joe Biden had to say about Laken Riley. Listen closely.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals?
He said Lincoln Riley. I believe he's the head coach for USC football team. Lincoln Riley. Like, he's not there. He's not there. So to say that you wouldn't rather Putin or anyone who's just intelligent, who's not just like a puppet, like literally a puppet with no life inside, to say that you wouldn't prefer them is you're just lying to yourself.
Not what I said.
I'm asking you a question.
That's not what I said.
I'm asking you a question.
You're asking the question because you still cannot deal with the fact that I have accurately described Vladimir Putin as coherent. He is.
There's no question he's coherent. I'm just saying.
He's smart?
I think he's an intelligent man, yes.
That's all I said. Oh my God, we got there. We can move on. Good. Oh my God, we got there. It's just, that's all I said, right?
But
okay,
it's about why you're using him
Okay.
as an instruction.
Because
I have sat
I
across
just
from
said
serial killers that are intelligent men.
Because
I don't want them deciding my taxes.
Did I say that I wanted Vladimir Putin to decide my taxes?
But why hold him up as an example? Why hold him up as an example?
We are talking about
it's like when Trump said Duterte is a tough guy.
Everyone's
Why
able
do
to
that?
comprehend this, so I'm going to reset it one more time.
One more time.
Okay? We are talking about the State of the Union. I'm talking about the mindset of Americans that understand this is all very performative and the insults to have him up there as if he is a leader of our nation, especially following the interview that we all watched in which Vladimir Putin first and foremost made it clear that he doesn't view our leaders as even leading the country. He views them all as puppets, and that he deals,
but you're still using Putin as a positive comparison to who we have. I mean, I don't know what I'm missing in terms of the logic.
This is how I take it.
You are missing.
Chris,
She is. Candace Owens is using Putin as a positive comparison to what we have, because what we have, it can't get much worse than. It can't. So yeah, Putin might have done some bad things. He operates on how you have to operate in order to hold power in Russia. But who knows how he would be as a U.S. president? Who knows? Maybe he would just operate within the rules and not try to do anything. Maybe he would operate more within the rules than the Biden regime does, because they're for sure not following the rules. They're for sure not. So who knows how he would act if he was the United States president? So yeah, Candace Owens is using Putin as a positive comparison to what we currently have, because my 1-year-old German short-haired pointer, my 1-year-old dog, is a positive comparison to what we have. You know, like there's not much. You can't get much worse. You can't get any worse, to be honest with you. Let me know in the comments though what you guys thought about this debate between Chris Cuomo and Candace Owens. It did get pretty heated, but I think obviously, in my opinion, Candace Owens came out on top. She's just using common sense. Like Candace Owens, in my opinion, is just the side of like, yeah, these are obvious things, common sense conclusions that I've come to, that I'm taking emotion out of. And I'm just going to say the facts of the situation, where Chris Cuomo is very much using emotion. And he knows that Putin is smarter than Biden. He knows that Putin would be a step up from Biden. But he's too emotional to actually say that. He's too triggered when he hears that to actually admit it. Let me know in the comments if you agree with that. If you enjoyed the content, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I hope to see you guys on the next one.